Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name's Charlie Bryan. I'm a member of the training and development team here at Adswerve, and I'll be your friendly neighborhood moderator for today's session, all about how Six Flags leverages AI for better customer insights. Before we get started, let's do some quick housekeeping and answer everyone's favorite question, which is, will this be recorded? That answer is yes, we are recording, and we will share a copy of that recording with you afterwards. If you have other questions during the webinar, please do not hesitate to post them in the questions section of your webinar control panel. We'll tackle those as they come and as we have time, and anything that we don't get to, we will follow up on. And finally, if you notice any technical glitches like audio going out or slides not advancing or something strange like that, let us know in that questions section so we can address those issues ASAP. Today, we are going on a roller coaster ride through a really neat case study, and we'll walk you through the problems that Six Flags encountered, the solution that we collaborated on with them, and the results that we all saw. And I'll introduce our experts soon, I promise. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about who Adswerve is and what we do. Adswerve is your trusted data, media, and technology consultancy. We are the #1 Google marketing partner, the top Google Cloud partner for marketing analytics, and we're the 2024 Adobe Emerging Solution Partner of the Year. We now have more than 250 industry-leading experts on our team, trusted by more than 800 clients, agencies, and brands to get the most of their Google and Adobe platforms and the rest of their MarTech stacks, really. And that number, 800, isn't just clients in name only. We spend more than 80,000 hours working on our clients' analytics projects in a year, and that equates to about 300 hours every workday just on analytics. And we handle about $1 billion in media spend every year, so you can imagine that we've seen it all and we've handled it all successfully. So as you'll see today, if you have a challenge, we can help find that solution. So enough about Adswerve. We could keep going, but we won't. Let's talk about our presenters today. I'm joined by two brilliant minds. We have Trevor Mata, the brand marketing manager at Six Flags, and Luka, a senior data scientist here at Adswerve. And before I hand the mic over, I do want to take a moment to recognize the incredible partnership that we've had with Six Flags. They have moved fearlessly forward by finding untapped opportunities within their data and by embracing emerging technologies like generative AI to help improve their guest experiences. In fact, this particular project is a finalist for the 2024 Ad Exchanger Award for Best Use of Data by an Agency, and we'll find out later today if they were selected as the winner. So we're crossing our fingers for that. So first off, congratulations to the team on being finalists for that Ad Exchanger Award. Trevor and Luka, how does that feel to have this project recognized at such a high level? And did you anticipate that this approach to social sentiment analysis and AI would make such an impact?
I guess I'll go first, Luka, but I feel very honored that this project that we've done is being recognized at this award ceremony. Six Flags, we try really hard to understand our consumer, and this is just one more way that we were able to better understand them. And using AI coupled with the social sentiment tool helps us, and probably the industry, derive insights faster, and we can feel better about the data-backed decisions we're making from what our customers are saying. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I'd agree with Trevor. This was definitely one of the more fun projects that I got to work with in the past year or so. And when it comes to generative AI, what I really liked here is that it went beyond just those demos in theory. There's always these use cases that are kind of pushed on us. I was like, go use it, do something with it. But in this case, it was almost the opposite. The client had a problem and generative AI helped solve it. Instead of kind of forcing new technology, we embrace the new technology.
Yeah, that's very cool. And congrats again. So Trevor, let's start with you. Six Flags is such an iconic brand with a diverse range of parks across the continent. So what were some of the biggest challenges that your team faced in terms of understanding guest sentiment across so many locations before you partnered with Adswerve?
It's a really good question. Six Flags at the time, we've recently merged with Cedar Fair, but at the time we had 28 properties or parks and locations. Each of them is very unique and how the guest feels about the park. All of our parks offer different things. Yes, of course, we all have roller coasters, but we have the seasonal events, very park-specific events. We have certain products that are available at some parks versus another park. And so there's just a lot of variety that we had to understand from what our guest was telling us across the social channels. And we used a legacy sentiment tool to help us try to figure out what our guests were feeling about us, but it was limited in some ways. One being we needed an integration with Reddit, and it was not available. There's a lot of Six Flags enthusiasts that speak their mind on Reddit, and we want to be able to hear what they're saying and understand, is it positive, is it negative, how can we interject to improve our guest experience at our park. We also wanted to see how social sentiment could be trended across time by park, as well as by park by category. And we had some of our park marketing teams at some points in time go out and actually look at the social platforms, find what the people are saying, screenshot what they're saying, and then try to make sense of what that means. But with our goal with this project was to limit how many people had to do manual work and to really understand the guest perceptions that would drive better park operations and experiences and improve some maybe of our marketing messages. We go to the next slide. So we had three things that we knew we needed to focus on. The first was we needed to tap into some of this data in the social platforms that we haven't been tapping into before. And we needed to make it simple for not only like a data analyst, but also for a park marketer to be able to understand what this information is. So the insights that came out of this project or this tool need to be clear and actionable insights. So if it's on a certain part of operations, if it's on a certain part of marketing, is it on price? Well, okay, it's on price, but what is it about the price? And including AI into this tool, which Luka will share with you in a little bit, helped us really have insightful insights that were actionable that we could make changes on very quickly. And towards the end, I'll share with you some of those wins that we've already had using this tool we've built with Adswerve. And so we knew what our goal was. We had a vision. We decided we need to look towards our partners. Google introduced us to Adswerve. Adswerve has been a great partner in helping us develop this tool. And as Luka has already said, it's a very innovative solution that we have applied AI to help us limit the amount of time we actually have to spend finding the insights and spending more time actioning those insights to improve the guest experience. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Luka to talk about the actual solution.
Luka, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, awesome. So our relationship with Six Flags actually started with a marketing analytics cloud workshop. So we met on site in Arlington, right next to one of their parks, and we reviewed what all they were doing with marketing analytics already. And Google was there also, and we would look into different data sources that they may have, different KPIs that they look at, what they want to achieve in terms of marketing strategies in the future. And then out of that meeting, we came with a lot of ideas. And this was one of the ideas, to have that approach to identifying the sentiment analysis, like Trevor said, not just for the whole brand, but across individual parks. And additionally, we actually dove into categories as well. So to get the data, we connected to 5 different social platforms. And these social platforms are getting dozens to hundreds of comments about individual parks and Six Flags in general daily. So we got 28 properties and a lot of this long text format data that's coming in. And now we want to get real-time insights out of that. So it's very cumbersome, for someone to go in and start reading everything about what's happening in the parks and what people are saying about the parks. So this is where Google Cloud really stepped forward with a few tools. So first of all, it helped us automate the import of all this data into the Google Cloud platform in a pretty raw format into Google Cloud Storage, for example. But then it also provided us with multi-language support. So every comment, for example, can be translated into English. Six Flags has parks in parts of Quebec, and they have parks in Mexico. So French and Spanish comments can get translated into English. We also use natural language processing API so that for each comment we would get a score of sentiment. And I'll dive into that a little bit later. But we also were able to take advantage of Gemini. So this is basically Google's ChatGPT to look at all the comments, to look at these dozens or hundreds of comments that parks are getting and give us summaries. So instead of having someone go through all the comments, read what's happening, we're now, instead of just getting that quantitative measure value that lets us know if the comments are happy or sad, like sentiment analysis does, also get a nice readable overview of what's happening, and maybe out of that find out some tidbits that otherwise would have stayed hidden with just looking at happy or sad. We can go on the next slide. And here we will look at some of the solution architecture. One thing that I first want to point out is that BigQuery here was at the center of the solution. So there were parts that were used to import data into BigQuery, and then data from BigQuery was pulled out and visualized and ran through Gemini and natural language API. But BigQuery as a data warehouse or unified data platform was at the center of the whole project. There are a few important things about it, and let's just quickly go through it and what made us choose it. So first of all, it's serverless. We do not need anyone adding storage to it or spinning up CPUs to handle all the data that's coming in. BigQuery scales itself, and it's fully managed serverless. So we really don't have to worry about the operation of it. Everything is handled for us. So from that perspective, it's very easy for us to develop on and then pass it on to a client in a way where they don't need someone, an administrator for the infrastructure. It also allows semi-structured data. So these imports are coming from 5 different sources, and each source will have different schema, and some of these schemas are nested. Some are very large, some are very wide, some are deep. BigQuery is a data warehouse that allows semi-structured data. We can just quickly import the data in without any transformation and have it available. And in this case, one thing I would like to point out too is that we took advantage of ELT versus ETL. So we extracted, loaded, and then transformed the data. So right now in BigQuery, we actually have the raw imports that we could start transforming or directly querying for each individual source. And we also have a transform data where we align the schemas across different sources and have it ready for natural language API and for Gemini. It's a great source for Looker. So BigQuery, the outputs, those final tables that we create, serve as a nice input to Looker, and Looker can then visualize everything, speed up some of the queries with BI engine. So BigQuery was really built to offer quick insights to BI tools. It allows scheduled queries, so without the need of another service, we can have this running scheduled daily and say, hey, all the comments, everything that we've imported over the last day or two, run a sentiment analysis on. It allows us routines and processes to implement routines and processes directly into BigQuery. So it's not just SQL, it's also these more complex potential functions that do that deal with the data, that provide us outputs. And then lastly, it allows us to integrate with remote models. And this really saved us a lot of time. So initially when we started working with this, some of this was not available yet. And about midway through, just at the right time, Google added remote models for, I believe, Gemini Pro, and that made our work a lot easier. So basically, and I'll show that in later slides as well, but from your SQL query, you can call Gemini and say, generate text using this specific prompt, And then using that prompt and the data that we've imported, it can create an overview. So we can say, hey, what's happening at this park based on these 20 comments from the table that we received about this specific park. Natural language processing API is another remote model that we could connect to. So instead of getting our data out and into the natural language processing API and then pulling the sentiment analysis back into BigQuery, all of it can be done as a SQL within the BigQuery itself. And then we also took advantage of the translation models in the same way. And to just quickly address the architecture, as I mentioned, BigQuery at the center of everything, but you can see a lot of other dots in there as well. So initially, we're just using those as an import. So you can see Cloud Scheduler, we have it set at certain time of day to execute or trigger a Cloud function. That Cloud function then goes into that yellow box where we have a lot of function to reach out to all these 5 different sources. And from those sources, we pull the data back. First, in their very raw format, we put it into Google Cloud Storage. From there, we just have an auto schema import into BigQuery that another Cloud function executes, and that Cloud function is triggered by a new object available in Cloud Storage. And then once that import is available, everything happens in BigQuery. So transformation of raw data into that singular schema across different sources that we can then use for reporting, that's done in BigQuery. Applying Gemini Pro, NLP API, translation API, all of that's done in BigQuery. And then Looker reads directly from BigQuery as well. So just from the Google Cloud Platform lens, BigQuery really stood out here as to what it was able to offer and how much quicker we were able to develop this project today than we would have just a couple months ago potentially. And we can go on the next slide. And this is now the fun part. So we're done with technology and what's pushing it in the back end. These are some of the real outputs that are provided for Six Flags and their parks. So on the left, we see providing sentiment trends and analysis. We would get these different comments and texts for all of their locations. So you can see the top one, for example, is for Six Flags America. Someone says, I love Six Flags because they're very well staffed. This is a park staff at every corner, resourceful, water park's amazing. So a lot of good things about the park. And then in the very right column, you'll see a score of 0.9. So this is the response that we get from the natural language processing API. So we feed it text for each individual mention, each individual comment, no matter the source, and we feed it to natural language processing API, which replies with a score between -1 and 1. So 1 would mean someone's really happy, excited, positive emotions about extracted from the text that they provided about the park. -1 would mean someone's really upset. Maybe there was rain and it made they didn't like their experience that day. So -1 to 1 would be the scale in which the natural language processing API sends back the sentiment score. You also see the magnitude right next to it. So the magnitude is something that we can use to then weigh some of these comments. So if someone says a lot more words, the magnitude will be higher. Their comment is probably a little more important. And then a column to the left. For each of the comments, if possible, we grab the location as well. So sometimes they'll be talking specifically about the park. So like in the first case, we know that they were referring to their experience with Six Flags America. Otherwise, they may just be talking about Six Flags in general. Like Trevor said, maybe on Reddit, there's a group of people and they're not talking about a specific experience, a specific park location, but Six Flags in general. So in that case, we also have a lot of comments that don't pertain a certain location. And then once we output that data, we output it into Looker. So this is just an example of one of the pages in the dashboard. So we look at the average sentiment overall across a certain date range. I believe in this case, we're looking at about 90 days. We look at number of daily comments, which would be that lighter blue. line, yeah, so the higher it goes, the more comments the parks are getting on those days. And, it's very seasonal as well. And then the darker blue is the sentiment analysis. So the sentiment analysis, maybe we'll see some jumps or some trends going up or down. Overall, you can see this one's pretty steady. But then we can also filter down on individual parks. So that's what the map on the left offers us. So if that was not blurred, you would see specifically all 28 parks. For each park, we would get color-coded sentiment, and then you would also be able to click on it and then maybe see the trend line for just that specific park, the average sentiment for that specific park as well. On the right to that, we just have an overview of all of those parks. You can see the average score for each, and then the number of comments that each park is getting. So some parks are more popular, we'll have a lot more comments. Some parks get a little less comments. And then from sentiment analysis, you can see that parks are quite different. So some are, in terms of sentiment and comments that they're getting, will perform a lot better than the others. And that then allows Trevor to design strategy around it and see how they can approach maybe some that had sentiment that's a little lower. Another thing that we implemented as well, and this one actually was just a pretty simple rule-based algorithm for categorization. So for each comment, we checked if it has specific keywords, and then based on those keywords, we would assign it a category. So we would know for entertainment, cleanliness, price, customer experience, and so on. We would be able to get an average score for each as an overall, and then for each individual property. So each park, we would know how well they're doing in terms of cleanliness, for example. And then again, we have another page on this dashboard where it shows if a specific park stands out or not, and then Trevor can design a strategy on how to address that. We can go on the next page. And this one was a lot of fun. Like I said, in this case, we found a way to long language models instead of trying to use it and push it into our project. So this was actually one of those where we were like, hey, we can do something really cool with it. And as you can see on the left, we used a prompt within SQL. So BigQuery allowed us to use, you can see in line 2, a outside model, which was Gemini, so something that's already pre-trained for us that Google has created. So we said generate text using sentiment analysis Gemini model. And then later on, a little lower, you'll see that we have an actual prompt. So just like you were talking to Gemini or ChatGPT to ask it for things, we're programmatically talking to it here. So the following are a series of posts separated by post. So all the comments that were coming in, we concatenated, put it in a text, separated them. And then we also said, given these posts, give us a summary in the following form. So give us a summary per location, top 5 positive, top 5 negative aspects, and then just let us know the number of occurrences for each comment. And I was always really happy or kind of surprised. My coworker actually wrote this prompt, and he addresses Gemini very nicely. So he was always using please and thank you in his comments. And then at the end, you can see there are a few parameters for that as well, like temperature, for example. So how much free will, you could say, are we giving Gemini when it's creating all of these comments and all of these overviews? And then on the right, you can see an example of, I believe this is maybe a weekly overview of Six Flags Magic Mountain. So it identified that there were 2 key events. It was Heroes and Villains Fest. Fright Fest Extreme was another event. And then for top 5 positive aspects, it said people like to mention roller coasters, variety of rides, cleanliness, friendly staff, and value for money. And then a little bit of description around each. And then it also, because we asked it for it, provided us with top 5 negative aspects. So you can see, for example, lines, hot weather, and crowds were some of the negative aspects that Gemini gathered out of all the posts that we fed into BigQuery and then created the prompt using those comments, mentions, posts. And then at the end, you'll notice we asked it give the number of occurrences, and then it says for roller coasters, showed up in 10 comments, and that's what made it. Then, the sentiment was also positive, and that made it to the top of the positive aspects. And then a quick overview at the end. Six Flags Magic Mountain is a popular theme park with a variety of rides and attractions, but visitors should be prepared for hot weather and lack of shade in some areas of the park. So again, really cool use case of Gemini, and what I really liked is the simplicity of just using it with a SQL directly from BigQuery, and then having these outputs available for different park managers, their marketing teams that they have, to read through them instead of going and scouring the web for what is being said about their specific parks. And we can go on the next slide.
Well, before you get into the results and everything, I have a question for you, because you mentioned at the very beginning of this process discussion your workshop that you did. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that workshop went and how you identified those opportunities and the kinds of ideas that came out, and how you figured out where to start with all that data coming from 28 different parks? Where did you even begin?
Yeah, so the overall workshop is something we do with a lot of clients, where in this case, we actually went on site to Arlington. The Six Flags has really cool offices. They're like in a stadium. I was really surprised. And then we looked at different data sources that they have. We looked at different KPIs that they're interested in. We examined what they measured, what data they're collecting already about their parks, their clients, website usage, app usage. We looked at where we can help them, maybe where we can save time, where we can automate some of these processes. It sounds like very quick right now, but it was actually a 2-day workshop that we sat down and went through a lot of different bullets and addressed them one by one. And a nice thing was too that Six Flags was able to provide a lot of stakeholders in their meeting, so that there's a lot of different departments and everybody has different KPIs and different usage of the data that they could have. So we basically just sat down and came out with a few opportunities. And then Trevor, you can talk about why this one made it as an independent project.
Yeah, so we had recognized that we needed a better way to categorize and trend sentiment across all of our parks, and being able to have not only leadership have access to this information, but individual park marketing teams have access to this information in a clear and simple dashboard format. And we didn't have something like that at the time. We were actually spending a lot of man hours, women hours, towards getting this sentiment manually. And so we were able to work with Adswerve and push this project to get done, so we could have those things that we knew we needed. I want to call out one of the really important parts of this slide from the AI standpoint. The number of occurrences for each of the comments, or each of these top 5 and top positive and top 5 negative aspects, is really important to us, because I'm sure somewhere along your career you've had someone say, hey, I've seen this comment on social, it's a really big issue. And you're like, okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I'm not sure. And you go yourself trying to look for that. You use your sentiment tool to try to see if this is a big issue. But understanding how many people are actually talking about these things gives you a magnitude of how great of importance, or how many resources we need to direct to solve this issue, or to address this issue.
That's great.
So looking at some of the results that I talked about, if you want to move to the next slide. We actually had a beta version of the dashboard given to us, and almost immediately after we got access to this beta version, we had a park ask us, like, we've seen a couple of comments about some park operations. We don't know if this is a big issue or an issue at all, but can you help us with it? And I'm like, sure, let's look in the dashboard. And we're able to filter out by this certain park and see what the sentiment was for that category, for operations, for guest experience. And then we were able to read the reviews, positive and negative. That's something I don't know if we saw on the example that Luka was sharing, but not only can you go into the AI tool and it shows you the top 5 and top 5 positive and negative, you can also read the reviews saying like, this is exactly what this person said for this park that was negative and positive over a certain time range and a certain channel that is important to you. So we're able to read saying, oh my gosh, this is a big issue. There's been a very big spike in these negative sentiments towards this one park operational challenge that they're having. And so we were able to talk with the park operations team, say this is an issue, we need to work to address it. But while we're working to address this concern the guests are having, let's add a message to our website so guests can feel better informed pre-visit to the park on what should they expect when they visit the park that day. And within 2 to 4 weeks after the guests saw the message, the operations team was aware and were able to improve that. The sentiment score went back up for that one category. And something that was already mentioned that's on the slide as well is across all of our marketing teams for all 28 properties and parks, we were able to save about 30 to 45 hours per week through this automation with AI and gathering and all this sentiment from all these different social channels. Huge time save, able to give time back to them to focus on more actionable things, things that are going to further drive the business. And then for long-term growth, I'd like to share a couple of things that have been very surprising to us that we've used the tool for, but have been very helpful. So during sale periods that Six Flags has, we run pretty much the same broad sale. Like for example, we just finished a sale called the biggest sale of the year. It was up to 70% off a lot of items, and each park is in a different market, and sometimes those markets during certain parts of the year can be a little bit more price sensitive than another. And we had a certain park that was feeling a little soft at the very beginning of the sale compared to some of the other parks that we usually compare against. And we're like, what can we do to improve for the rest of the sale? And so we looked to this tool that we built with Adswerve, and of course we saw that there was price sensitivity in this market towards a certain product that was on sale. And so we were able to say, okay, we know this is true, we're able to verify this, let's change some of our marketing messaging that we're pushing out to guests to show a better value for this admission product. And we did that on our website, we did that on paid media, on video and display and social channels, and we saw that this admission product increased in being purchased. We sold more units of that product. So that's one unique way that we've used this tool for. And then most recently, we've launched our Fright Fest event, our Halloween event that's at all of our theme parks. And we've incorporated using movie franchise IP at a select number of our parks. We've never done this before. We're super excited to do it. So like Saw and a couple other movie franchises, we wanted to see what were the guests saying about these new haunted experiences. We've invested a lot of money. We've tried to make it the best experience possible. And so using Adswerve's tool, we were able to say this weekend at the parks that have these new haunted houses, these haunted mazes, what was the experience? What did the guests find value from it? Were the guests scared? And we were able to see all those things in the AI report that is generated. And so we're able to now take those insights and not spending a long time finding those and share them back with the park operations team, share them back with the park marketing team, and say, hey, this is what's happening, this is what the guests are saying, use this, and be able to improve upon these certain mazes. Because they'll say like, this maze, we needed a little bit more help in this maze. And so it's very, very actionable data-backed insights there. So looking forward, as I said at the beginning, Six Flags and Cedar Fair have merged into one company. And for this project, we've worked on all 28 legacy Six Flags theme parks, water parks, and resorts. I think looking forward, we want to incorporate the learnings that we've had from social sentiment with Six Flags and see what kind of learnings we can get from the legacy Cedar Fair parks now that we're all one company, and grow how we're improving the guest experience with all these insights that we're having to also drive business results and to save people time.
Now, during the development of this social sentiment tool, using AI and all these new approaches, did any surprising or quirky trends pop up in the data, like an unexpected favorite snack or some hidden gem that got great reviews that you just were not expecting?
It's interesting when certain times you see a specific ride be called out multiple times that hasn't trended for like the entire year. Like at our Park Magic Mountain, they have world-class, record-breaking roller coasters across the entire park. So you see certain rides be called out over and over and over. But when you see a park like Six Flags Fiesta Texas call out the Iron Rattler one weekend, and there was 15, 30 posts for the Iron Rattler, you're like, wow, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what made it that great that weekend. So yeah, it's been kind of interesting.
Nice. That's really cool. And I know that we're coming up on time. I want to make sure that we have time for the how you can apply this portion. So Luka, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yeah, so at the end, when you win, we win. Let's move fearlessly forward and let's look at how else we can apply all these findings. So there's generative AI, there's sentiment analysis, there's natural language processing API, there's BigQuery, there's a lot of these things, but how can we start applying all of this? So one of the things Trevor already mentioned is creatives. So analysis like this can impact how you build your own creatives, and actually you could even use the generative AI, like in this case Gemini and BigQuery, to help you maybe give some ideas for your creatives. In this case, we were able to identify locations. One of the examples Trevor had is about pricing, and then with that, maybe use different approach to how you're building out creatives. There are other sources of data to think about. So in this case, we look at social media, different feedback platforms that are talking about parks and Six Flags. But maybe you have a different source. Maybe you have a support center that's getting a lot of messages, either emails or voice calls or texts, and you have your employees sending out emails. So this would be one way to maybe track the sentiment analysis of those incoming emails to see if your team is improving or if the sentiment's going down. And with all the data in one place, you can then just look at typical analytics as well, like how long does it take to reply. But on the other hand, you also have Gemini, so you can have a more quality overview of what is the most common problem in the past week that our clients are reaching to us about. With generative AI, in this case, you saw how we overviewed a list of comments, but there's again anything else that we can aggregate or simplify. So something like, I was just testing out, you can see Adswerve has new brand. You can see a lot of yellow and pink now. And our approach to, when I read through our branding guideline, for example, there's also a very specific way of how we should, the language we should use and how we should talk. So one of the things I was actually able to do is feed Gemini our branding document and then ask it to help me create some sentences and some approaches that are going to respect our branding and have an overview of that, but then based on it, generate something new. I did not create this slide deck with it, but there's a lot of opportunities of just other Gemini applications. And then overall, you can get even more interactive with it. So instead of just everything being SQL based, now you can start producing human-like questions to your data and getting human-like responses. So a lot more interactive. Here you saw we had that static prompt about top 5 positive, top 5 negative, and an overview of the park. There's a ways to, that prompt doesn't have to be static, and we could dynamically add some interactions. So these are just 4 ideas of what else you could do with everything that we've done here, or how else you can apply this technology. But it's pretty limitless. So anything you can think of, there's likely that we can use it for.
Excellent. I don't see any questions from the audience yet, but if you have them, feel free to put them in the question box in your webinar control panel. So while we give them a few minutes to post their questions there, Trevor, you mentioned that this solution saves each team 35 to 40 hours a week, which is a whole job. Like that's a role, that's a whole position. So how, Luka, from a technical perspective, and Trevor from a user perspective, how were you able to streamline that process so dramatically and keep it user friendly? Like, did you have to go through iterations? What kind of input did Six Flags have on the tool? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, from Six Flags side, we worked very closely with Luka and his team on understanding what the dashboard needed to look like, what it needed to include, what filters we needed to have in the dashboard, so that it wouldn't just be, here's data, but here's data that's specific to you that you can actually derive insights from. And then we shared renditions of the dashboard with some of the park marketing teams. And we asked them, what do you think about this? What else would you want to see in here? Is this intuitive enough? Are these insights that are coming through this tool, are they useful? And they gave some great feedback back to the Six Flags corporate team, which we were able to share back with Adswerve to make some additional adjustments. But the thing I think really helped the buy-in of all the teams across the organization is having a short training with them on all the capabilities of the dashboard. And when I say short, it was like 20-30 minutes, because the dashboard is very simple to understand, and with the insights auto-populating through Gen AI, it's very fast to be able to understand what's happening at the park during certain times of the year.
Yeah, from technology standpoint, I think Trevor did, the load of the work here. He provided us with a mock-up, for example, of what they want to look at, and when we know what a client wants to look at, we can build it. So that was really helpful. And then Looker was the place that really allowed, different park managers to log into and review the dashboard and play with it and filter it easily, quickly with the UI, versus having to go into a Google Cloud platform and service like BigQuery that's a little more on the technical side.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I still don't see any questions, so I'm assuming that people are just off dreaming about all the things they can do with this kind of stuff. So the transformation that we've seen at Six Flags is a testament to their forward-thinking approach, and their ability to embrace Gen AI and other cutting-edge technologies has really allowed them to unlock unprecedented insights and act on them in real time. So Six Flags is really setting the bar for guest experiences in the entertainment industry, and it's been an honor to partner with such an innovative team. And we do have one question. What does something like this, cost to implement? We will follow up on that, Sue. We'll follow up and let you know. We have your question, we have your contact information, so we'll follow up and discuss some options with you if you're curious about this kind of thing. So great question, though. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's webinar. I'd like to thank our presenters, Trevor and Luka, for sharing your insight. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending. Keep an eye out for the follow-up email that's going to have that recording for this session, and let us know if we can help you with a marketing challenge. And have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.